I wanted to share a brief story that I think will be helpful for folks. One of the things that I notice is that people will invite me and you to be small. So I believe in being able to recognize my strengths. I believe in being able to recognize my superpowers. And I believe in fully leaning into them, communicating them in a way that I sound reassured and confident within myself. Because guess what? I can do an amazing job of listing the things that I find to be flaws within me. I can do an amazing job of quickly critiquing and picking out the things about myself that I don't like or that I'm ashamed of. And so years ago, what I started to do was if someone were to ask me a question or if it just kind of fit into the conversation or if I found it to be necessary, I would 100% own my strength. And so, what that sounded like before is meeting someone and people saying, not only what is it that you do, but what makes you different from other people, right? And I will share directly with folks that I am extraordinary, that the things that my mind can do, that the information that I can filter through there, the things that I can just help make sense or make digestible, my way of thinking and my way of being within that is extraordinary. And I remember about 5 years ago, someone that's a good friend of mine now, a previous coworker of mine, told me, when you first said that, I thought that you were arrogant and cocky. She told me that when you first said that, I thought you were arrogant and cocky. And her first thought was, well, how extraordinary could you be, or how would you even recognize that, right? And so again, people will invite us to be small and saying like, well, that's arrogant, well, that's cocky, or like, let me give you a compliment on how extraordinary you are. Don't just say it and claim it out loud. Yet there's more comfort if I were to beat up on myself about, I'm not sure about this or I'm not sure about that, and seek reassurance from other people telling me that it's okay, that they recognize that this is a strength in me, so I can recognize this as a strength in me. And so that same friend now came back and said, and then I got to see you do what you do. She and I worked closely together for 2 years. She said, and then I got to see you do what you do. And I realized you weren't being cocky or arrogant. You knew. You knew what was a strength of yours. You weren't saying it to be boastful, right? And she came to know me and recognized that I do not lack humility or being humble. She said, but to hear you say that, and to hear you say that so confidently and without question and without looking for validation from me, made me feel a certain kind of way. Where do people invite you to be small? Where do people invite you to seek their reassurance and their permission for standing 10 toes down in what your gifts are and what your superpowers are? I have long lived a life of being able to collect and point out every single flaw imaginable. As I was going through grade school, I used to tell people nobody can say something to me that I haven't already said to myself. Nobody can say something to me that I haven't already said to myself. I can see my flaws and my shortcomings. I can see my weaknesses and my failures really clearly. And so for someone like me who identifies that a part of my skill set is in being pragmatic, why would I not also be able to clearly see and articulate what I'm fucking good at? Why would I not? I have no idea if that gets centered off of here. If it does, I guess I'll figure out a way to work around it. But why would you not? You can list so many flaws about yourself. Some of them you will say openly and freely to people. Some of them you hold and you hide because of the shame attributed to it. But in that ability to list so many flaws of yourself, why would you not be able to just as strongly and just with as much conviction be able to say, this is where I'm strong. This is where I'm extraordinary. This is where I'm gifted. And then lean into that. And when people invite you to be small, continue to be big. And big doesn't mean loud. Big doesn't mean proving. Big means you stand 10 toes down in knowing who you are and what you bring. How do people invite you to stay small? On the other side of that, how do people invite you to take up space? More importantly, how do you invite yourself to take up space? I like to tell folks, especially when I'm in spaces that's talking about advocates and advocacy work, I don't need you to clear space for me. I don't need you to clear space for me. I take up space by walking in a room. I take up space by filling myself up and inviting myself to be fully present. How do you invite yourself to be fully present? How do you invite yourself to take up space? How do you allow yourself to say where you're strong, where you're gifted, where you're superpowered? How do you invite yourself to share those things in a way that allows you to take responsibility for them because they are of you? Not in a way that requests permission or reassurance from other people. How do you redefine how some folks define being humble or being boastful and arrogant? You're allowed to be confident. Give yourself full permission to do so. Take up space. Recognize where you're strong. Identify your gifts. See where you are superpowered. And be just as willing to say those things with conviction to yourself and out in the world as you are with your shortcomings.